Hi, my name is Ross, and in this video I'd like to tell you more about my ideas before the Youth Parliament elections at the end of February. This time of hardship is a tough time for us young people in Britain. The government seems intent on punishing us through high tuition fees and the abolition of EMA, yet they did nothing to take the bonuses away from failed bankers. But enough ranting. Here are my ideas for you to digest before the NYP election in February. At a recent meeting of potential candidates for this role, the following priorities were decided. Number 1. Make public transport cheaper, better and accessible for all. This is important, as young people cannot often drive because we are too young or it's too expensive to run and own a car. Therefore, public transport should be cheaper for us. Number 2. Individualised learning for all. It's important that education revolves around the pupil or student and helps them specifically. Generalised learning can sometimes leave us feeling isolated and unsure of where to go. Number 3. A curriculum to prepare us for life. Currently the curriculum, in my opinion, offers little in the way of life skills, and in my opinion it's important to learn about finance, citizenship and relationships, for example. Number 4. Fund youth services, don't cut them. Without youth services, such as the Air Cadets, of which I was a member for 4 years, we would lack an alternative to hanging out on the streets or sitting at home every night. Extracurricular options must be offered to those who want them. These will improve skills and general happiness. Number 5. Involve more young people in the political system. As a group of people unable to vote, we have very little political power. We need a greater education in the political system to prepare us for life, and greater political involvement will help young people to achieve their aims. I believe passionately in the representation of young people who are often neglected when it comes to government policy. Therefore, my ideas will revolve around these 5 priorities, but will include some other beliefs too. So, let me start with higher education. We're now going to have to pay £9,000 a year just to get a degree. Now we're supposedly all in this together, as David Cameron keeps saying, but I don't get why he won't punish those who made the mistakes in the first place. Ideally, I would love to get a degree and not have to pay a penny, as I'm sure you guys would too. But what the government is reluctant to admit is that we have to pay interest on top of that, £30,000 of debt as well. So really, it's just a wee bit more than £9,000 a year, isn't it? If we must pay for our others' mistakes, the loan should be interest-free. When I was a high school kid, Tony Blair planned for half of young people to go to university. Now it's a nice thought, I suppose, but what he failed to recognise is that this would really devalue the degree. Imagine being an employer and 50 of your 100 applicants, for example, have really similar qualifications. It would be so hard to choose. Also, it's resulted in a massive skills shortage, with traditional trades really declining in Britain. I believe there should be a smaller, more competitive university sector based around an academic path and professions such as teaching, medicine and law. Now, before you say, well, hang on, does this make me worse in academics if I don't go to university? Then hear me out. I also passionately believe there needs to be a vocational sector, just as competitive, but it needs to be emphasised in equal measure. Trades such as craftsmanship, social care, nursing and music technology, for example, are still massively important to our country and just as useful. It's certainly not the case that vocational students are in any case worse in academics, but it would be better for them to get the qualifications and skills that are useful to them. Again, on the topic of education, I believe the national curriculum needs a wee bit of tinkering, especially when it comes to those DOS subjects of citizenship or religious studies. Now, I and a lot of my friends didn't see the use of RS apart from maybe getting to watch Bruce Almighty from time to time. However, it didn't really teach us anything useful, and it ended up being 2 pointless hours in the week. Now, in my opinion, high school students should be prepared for post-16 life with basic life skills, including the following. First, basic political education, where they learn the basics of our democracy and the political system, as well as the importance of some issues. Also, how many times have you heard someone say they didn't have a clue who David Cameron was? As much as I would like to see more young people involved in politics, it still remains a long way off when the political education is frankly quite poor. Also, sex and relationship education. Teenage pregnancy is a massive issue in Britain and needs to be tackled with education in sex. However, we also need to make sure that young people understand other relationship issues such as domestic violence, which sadly it does happen in the United Kingdom. Finally, do you remember how many times you said in maths, when am I ever going to need to find x when I'm older? Well, I sort of share that sentiment, and whilst I don't think the time has come to get rid of maths just yet, I do think we need a sort of mathematical subject of more practical use. I would encourage a life skills class where students learn about finance and budgeting to help them learn how to use banks, the dangers of credit cards, student fees and money in general. Now, moving on from compulsory education, Post-16 life is just as important as pre-16 life, as it's that grey area between GCSEs and full-time work. Now, a lot of us are now finding ourselves NEETs, which is otherwise known as not in education, employment, or training. And I believe we need positive help from the government and careers advisors in finding work or training if we don't go on to college or university. I think every school or college and its pupils should have the right to a decent careers advisor, internal or external, such as connections, to help pupils make relaxed, impartial choices about their future. But this doesn't quite cover it. We need more post-16 choice for academic and vocational courses, as well as on-the-job placements, such as apprenticeships. I would also encourage the introduction of temporary, say, 1-week placements with companies, so students can see if they enjoy that line of work if they're interested in it. They could perhaps do it over the summer holidays of year 10-11. Also, given that I live in Norfolk, I understand that rural areas are sometimes not as fun as the towns or the city. Now this creates two problems. One, that obviously those of us that do live in the country perhaps don't get out as much. Two, because we don't get out, we don't do much socialising outside of school or college. Now, some would say, get the bus then. Well, I live in Beaufort, which is part of suburban Norwich, and it cost me £4 for a return to the city. I hate to imagine what a return to Watton or something like that costs nowadays, especially for those who have a job in the city. Connect Bus, a bus company based in Durham, has a student ticket, which is highly commendable, but I don't think that goes far enough. I believe that bus companies such as First should do the same, or extend their child ticket to 18 and acknowledge that not all of us are lucky enough to be earning money just yet. Furthermore, the Fair Fare scheme set up by Norfolk County Council fights for £4.5 million that the government failed to grant us for our public transport. I will add my name to this campaign list if it means the bus fares for young people are reduced. Also, if that doesn't go far enough, I would like to see more sports and youth facilities set up and partly funded by the government in rural areas of Norfolk. Youth organisations such as Young Farmers, cadets and even football teams provide an interesting place where we find things to do and learn skills that ultimately benefit us in the future. That concludes my short speech. I hope you've learned a bit more about my ideas and beliefs, and that this encourages you to vote for me at the election at the end of February.